please welcome back to the show for his long-awaited return. Please welcome back Pat Spain. How's it going today, man?
Doing well. How about yourself?
Not too bad. Absolute pleasure to finally get you back on the show. I know we intended to talk a lot earlier last time we had a show, but life gets in the way sometimes. So I'm glad that we're able to finally come back around. And you have a lot of new exciting stuff going on, so it kind of worked out.
Yes, thank you so much for having me back, and thank you for the patience. I'm sorry. I know that it's been a lot of back and forth and a lot of kind of my disappearing. So I apologize for that. But thank
Oh,
you.
no worries at all. I know you had some stuff going on with your personal life, and for a lot of people, I mean, a lot of this stuff is more of like their secondary and not necessarily their first means of income. So everything kind of gets in the way sometimes. But from what I was hearing, you're kind of shifting that back around again after being the beast hunter. You're starting to flip that around and starting to get back into it. So that's a good thing, man.
I am. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I love this stuff. I have always loved this, and I haven't figured out how to make it a full time thing, as you said, but it's seeming like more and more of a possibility these days. So yeah, I'm working on a few new projects and definitely focused on this a lot more. Just signed a new speaking agent, and got a couple books and a couple potential series going. So I'm excited to be here.
Oh yeah, man. You just got to keep chugging away just a little bit at a time. And then one day we'll all kind of figure it out. We're able to do this type of stuff full time. But hey, when one door closes, another one opens. Cause I know that you had some stuff, like I said, happen with work, but it seems like this new door opens. So for anybody out there that's going through some hard times, you never know what the end cycle might be. You might end up getting into something you might end up enjoying more, such as yourself. So
Absolutely agree. Yeah. Yeah, and I've kept I've never worked less than 2 jobs at any given time in my life. So, yeah, it's not unusual for me to be kind of plugging away at all different opportunities.
you and me both, man. It's one of those things that if you're in this type of research, you have like your normal 9 to 5 job, and then this is like the secondary job. So
Oh,
just by
yeah.
being in this field, honestly, I feel like you're always running 2 jobs. And then if you have kids, that's running 3 jobs. So
Yeah. Yeah, and biology is the same thing, man. When I was in school, I was going to school full time as a marine biology major, philosophy minor. I was working, I was creating a vertebrate lab, like museum thing for my school. I was TAing 3 different labs. I was working at the New England Aquarium, and I was working at a clothing store on Newbury Street, Boston. So, yeah, I've always kept busy.
yeah, I was gonna say, especially being a college student, you got that extra one thrown in there working at some
Yeah.
clothing company. But
Oh, it was ridiculous. Yeah, it was nuts. There was 1 week, my wife will still talk about this. I went 7 nights with sleeping a total of 4 hours.
ooh, that's back in the like ramen noodles days too, I'm assuming. So
Oh,
not only
yeah.
you're not getting any sleep, but you're also not getting any type of good nutrition either.
I was hallucinating by the end of it, man. We went to the MFA with the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston with some friends. I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know why that was a priority over sleeping, but the statue started moving, and I had like a minor freak out, and I was like, I have to go. I'm gonna go fall asleep like back over on that bench. You guys enjoy.
They find you on something that you thought was an art or thought was a bench, but it's actually like an art piece, and you're just passed out
Exactly.
on it.
Yep. No one was moving me either. That was it.
I think this man's dead. We need to we need
Yeah.
to call the authorities. So I guess a good spot to start before we start getting into some of your newer stuff. For anybody that may not have listened to the last episode that we did together, or that may not be familiar with beast hunters in general, or some of your previous work, you don't have to go as in depth as last time. But why don't you let them know a little bit about yourself and a little bit about what you do, man?
Yeah, thank you so much. So, I am a wildlife biologist and proud to say a cryptozoologist. And it took me a long time to say that because I didn't feel that I had earned the title of cryptozoologist. It's not something that you get a degree in, unlike marine biology. But the community has been so great in embracing me, and I've done enough of my own research now where I feel really proud to be able to call myself a cryptozoologist. And I think what that means to me is that I don't distinguish cryptozoology from biology. I say that all that it is biology with a little bit of anthropology thrown in. So I've hosted a couple different series, one on National Geographic, one on Travel Channel. Then I've done appearances on a whole bunch of other series, and I write books. I travel the world. I'm a father, and yeah, I keep real busy.
Never a bad thing, man. And I know with a lot of your books too, you kind of have like a different viewpoint on a lot of this stuff. Because I know a lot of people get into like the more woo-woo aspect of a lot of these things, but I know that, considering that you're a biologist, you come at it from more of like the scientific angle. So I know that at least your first handful of books, because I know that you have two newer ones that you're working on, which we'll definitely be getting into. But if you want to, at least to kind of give the listeners a little bit more of your background and where you come from with a lot of this research, if you want to kind of give a quick brush over of your first couple books.
Yeah, absolutely. So I definitely do approach this from a scientific perspective, and I think that it's a lot of fun when people get into the multidimensional and the other aspects of things, and I love that possibility. But I am not a I am a biologist, and that's where I approach things from, is the angle of biology. So I take a look at some of these creatures that may or may not exist, and one of the first things that I do is look at the known animals in the area and approach this from a perspective of, could this be mistaken identity? And once I've ruled that out, then I start to talk about the traits that people see in these creatures and say, is this biologically possible? And what can we figure out from the stories that we've heard and from the sightings that we've had? And then I've been fortunate enough to be able to go to the area and actually look into the veracity of these accounts. And the books really present that from a biological angle on the animals, but also just what it's like being there, what it's like being in West Africa, what it's like being in Mongolia, in the deepest part of the Amazon. With a very rarely contacted from the West tribe, living with all these different individuals, participating in their rituals, learning their cultures, and eating the same foods. And I'm the perpetual fish out of water. I luckily don't get embarrassed very easily, but I do embarrass myself all the time. And that's really what the books show, is just what the experience is like, to be out there, and what the reality is, besides what you see on TV, but what the reality is when you're living with a different pygmy tribe in Cameroon, and it gets pretty interesting.
Say some of your books have some of the best titles, like "How I Found the Worst Bathroom on Earth and Learned to Love Cheese Flavored Vodka." Where's the one that you said about smugglers? Here it is. "How I Lost My Mind, Was Dyed Blue, and Accidentally Learned How to Smuggle Weapons." Like these books,
Yeah.
as long they're covering cryptids, of course, but they end up having some crazy titles because you kind of have this, for lack of a better term, I guess, like a Hunter S. Thompson esque means to your research, that not only are you there writing about it, but you're kind of documenting your own adventures along the path of it. So I think it's kind of interesting because it's kind of, I don't want to say like Hunter S. Thompson directly, of course, but
No,
you
no,
kind of have
that's
somewhat
a
of that
huge
style of the
compliment.
writing.
Thank you so much. That is a massive compliment to my writing, and if I could even be half the writer that Thompson is, that would be phenomenal. But yeah, that Gonzo style of just being in the thick of it. And yeah, I mean, these are all real stories. These are the ridiculous things that you end up going through. That smuggling weapons. I had just done the bullet ant ritual, which is one of the most extreme tribal rituals in the world, where I was stung hundreds of times on my hands by bullet ants, and I absolutely lost my mind. I started screaming in our producer's face. I tackled our sound guy. I just screamed uncontrollably for hours on end.
I
And
think I remember seeing that clip before I even
oh,
knew who you were. I remember watching that clip and not even knowing who this was, but just watching this guy in this tent with these things on his hands just screaming.
it was madness. It was, and what you see, they edited it down masterfully down to about a 4 minute part, but that's over a day. That's about 27 hours of footage that they edit down to this little 4 minute bit. So I just absolutely lost it. And then after that, I was obviously exhausted. Once I regained kind of consciousness and I came back into myself, and I tried to remember what this was like, and I started writing notes and everything with hands that barely worked. We immediately had to fly out and go to the next location. So I'm still kind of woozy and kind of out of it, and I did not pack very appropriately to get on a plane. And I realized we're in rural Brazil, and we're going to get on the plane, and I'm kind of just shovel, like I put my bag through the whatever detector thing is, and then I get on the plane, and I'm still really out of it, and we land, and all of a sudden I went, oh man, um, this probably isn't the best. I opened it up. I had two propane canisters. I had a whole bunch of knives. I had like a big hunting knife in there. I had a full bow and arrow packed in a pizza box. I had no idea what I was doing. And somehow I got to fly with it and didn't get arrested.
It's one of those things that you lucked out that you were in a country that had a little bit more lax security because they don't have stuff like the Patriot Act. So if it was the Patriot Act, man, you would have been screwed.
Oh, I would have been done. Done. I would be on every list you can. I'm already on some kind of list because whenever I'm flying in the US, and this is not an exaggeration, this is whenever I am flying in the US, I'm the random check. I get pulled into the naughty room constantly. I am always I've gotten fully strip searched, I've gotten searched, I've gotten the extra screening. They scan my hands for bomb making materials. I don't know how I got on this list, but I would love to be off of that.
I
But
almost
it,
wonder if it's because they know that you deal with animals. I wonder if their intention isn't like drugs or like weapons, but they think that you might be like smuggling animals or something like that. I feel like you look up your name online and the first thing that pops up is you're this like documentary animal guy. So I mean, I feel like the first thing that they're thinking is that you're smuggling. That's probably why they got you on that list. They're checking for animals.
it is
Especially because
possible. It
that's
is.
getting really bad lately too.
It
I've been seeing a
is.
lot about people smuggling animals lately.
Yeah, yeah, in really like terrifying ways and really
Yeah.
harmful to the animals as well, but dangerous for people too. So, yeah, I don't know what they're looking for on me, but I know that they are not very happy with me in a lot of different situations. And I have not made it easy for myself, I do have to say. Besides that one in Brazil, I was going in England and I was traveling from London to Paris, and I didn't realize that the train was going to have like the same level of security that a plane would. So as we're approaching the train, my I said to my wife, and I was like, "Huh, there's a big security line there." She goes, "Yeah, it's we're gonna get all checked." And I went, "Oh, this is gonna be fun." And she's like, "What did you do?" I was like, "You better go ahead of me," because I had all the stuff ready to go camping on the next the next leg of the trip wherever I was going. So as we get through security, alarms start going off, everything else, and this super big British dude walks over and he's like, "Excuse me, sir, do you have weapons in your bag?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "You don't have any?" He's like, "You don't have any knives?" And I was like, "Oh, I have knives." I would. I'm thinking weapons. Like I don't have any firearms. I don't know.
It's the
And
UK. That's their big problem is knife crime.
that's
They got rid of the guns, so the knives just got worse.
yeah. So I had a lot of knives in my bag, and I had
That's as
snake
bad as having a
sticks and
bag full of guns in the US over there.
yeah, they weren't very happy. So they confiscated all of them, and luckily the guy was really nice. And as long as I was willing to give them up without like touching anything, just keeping my hands to the air while they went through my luggage, I was like, "All right, yeah, I'm sorry." So the moral of the story is, if you're traveling with me, you're gonna be in for some fun times if we're crossing borders.
You got to be aware of the laws, but I mean, you travel so much that I feel like at a certain point, it's hard to keep aware of like the certain things going into certain places because in most places, I mean, you're going on a train and you got like your knives to go camping and stuff like that. You wouldn't even put two thoughts into it. But the UK, that
No,
specific place is the only place where they're going to have a problem with that. And of
that's
course,
gonna be
you'd
a
be the
real
one that
big
gets
deal.
flagged for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I gotta say Russia's not big on it either. There I got pulled into the naughty room in Russia. I had an antique knife again. It was a knife that I had picked up in a bazaar in like a little carnival place, and there you could not hurt anyone with this. It's impossible to hurt anyone with it. I looked at it as an antique that would be cool to have up on the shelf, but the Russian authorities didn't see it that way.
No, that's a matter of I feel like there's a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Like mobs or whatever they happen to call them over there. They're usually the ones running the train. So a lot of the time I feel like it's a matter of they just take anything that they could see that somebody could fight against them if they decide they just want to take everybody's money on the train.
That's a fair point too. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm not a very intimidating guy. Like that's people hear that the shows that I've done, Legend Hunter, Beast Hunter, and they expect they're gonna get some big like pro wrestler guy. And then they see me like this science nerd who's constantly grinning. It looks like I'm the least threatening person on earth. And I think for TV that can be a little bit disappointing for people. But I always feel like when I'm traveling, people are just gonna not look at me as a threat. But so far that hasn't worked out.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's kind of how I see it. Is that if you are one of these people that like travels around the world, starts to get close in with these tribes, starts to hear their local stories, all this stuff. If you have that like big aggressor mentality, it doesn't typically work for you. A lot of the guys that are doing the stuff like you do, they kind of have more of like your I don't want to you were saying nerdy, but like kind of
Yeah,
like
yeah,
a
yeah.
nerdy kind of like context to them because honestly, like you said, it's less offensive to those tribes too. It shows that you're kind of interested in them. You're not coming up and like intimidating them I feel like a lot of the adventurer types are kind of more of the scrawnier white guys, weirdly enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's really it's approaching it from an area of respect and approaching it from a just a humbleness. It's just saying like, I don't know anything about this, but I'm open to it. I am willing to do like I'm willing to put myself in whatever situation you can put me in, and that's what I've found people respond to the most. It's just like, oh, you're gonna try to eat this goat knuckle? I'm like, yeah, sure, all right. Hand me a big handful of goat knuckles. I'll watch you and I'll give it a shot. And they respond to that. And it's not if you came in there with some kind of the classic ugly American kind of attitude, it's not
Yeah.
going to get you very far.
Just out of curiosity, because you did bring up food, and I was thinking this a little bit earlier when you were saying that you used to go and eat all the different foods and
Sure.
everything. As far as like eating foods with the tribes, everything, like what is like the most bizarre thing that you've ever eaten?
So the reality is that the weirdest things that you can eat when you're traveling are fruits and vegetables because there's no comparison to it. There's just you can have some fruit that literally tastes like nothing else on earth. There's this snake fruit and there's this one particular type of passion fruit that I had in Indonesia that it's just uncomparable, and it's a different texture, it's a different everything, but no one wants to hear about fruits and vegetables because that's not it just doesn't make for the best story. So the weirdest things that people like relate to are, I had salty mare's milk everywhere that you went in Mongolia. Everyone's like it's a gur, but it's like what we would call a yurt. Everyone that you went into, they would offer you a bowl of sweets, and then they'd give you this semi-fermented, warm, salted horse's milk or mare's milk, and it's the weirdest. I mean, I feel awful saying it because I know it's a very important cultural, but to my taste buds, it was just awful. But
Is
you,
it like
it
an
would be
alcohol? Because you said it was fermented. Is it like a celebratory like alcohol? Like, would you get theoretically like a buzz if you drank enough of this stuff?
so there's a game where you just drink it. You drink it until you throw up. So you definitely puke before you got drunk off of it. It's a really really low alcohol. It just tastes like it's soured. So, but the game is, yeah, you drink it until you vomit, and then they draw a line in the sand, and you have to try to vomit over the line. And I've never figured out how that's a game, but yeah, that's it was
Drinking
explained
something
to us.
purposely to throw up is a very strange concept to me because
Yeah,
it would make sense to me, at least as an American, because I guess that's the American mentality on things. If you're going to drink something that's disgusting, it at least has to give you a little bit of a buzz, right?
right.
But
Yeah.
this one is just, we're just puking for the sake of it. Let's
No,
see
we're
how
just
far
gonna
we can
puke.
puke
We're
in the
just gonna
puke.
it's yeah, you in the distance that you puke. And the our associate producer on the shoot is this woman Laura who's just incredible. And as we're being described this game, they're like, "Oh, we should play it tonight. It's going to be so much fun." And she's like, "That sounds terrible." And the guy looks at her and he goes, "Women don't play." And she was like, "Obviously." Yes.
Did
Like
you
you
end up playing
say,
this game? What did you set a
I did.
record playing this game?
I did not. I did not. That night we ended up taking the semi-fermented mare's milk and making vodka out of it, and that's the Parmesan flavored, cheese flavored vodka that we made. Was you take a whole like gallons of this mare's milk, and we created a Chinese still, and yeah, distilled it down into hot vodka. And I did get really, really drunk off of the hot vodka, and then I chased camel spiders through the desert and almost got lost and kind of wandered off much further than I should have in the middle of the Gobi Desert.
Was the vodka at least a little bit better tasting than the milk itself?
After two of them, yes, absolutely. It was incredible.
Getting drunk and chasing camel spiders, like that sounds like it could potentially be dangerous if you're not the right person.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I think for anyone, the producer was very angry at me as I was wandering off into the middle of the desert.
So, just out of curiosity, too, because my whole familiarization with camel spiders is usually the videos you see of people in
Oh
barracks and they're
yeah.
dealing with these things and they're trying to like shoo them off or smash them. Like, are they as vicious as they seem? Because I know that they
No.
do a thing where they chase after things that they see as a predator, but I know a lot of stuff will do that more as an intimidation factor rather than it's actually going to attack the thing. So, I'm assuming
Total
that's probably the deal with
intimidation.
these things, right?
Yeah, totally. They're basically harmless. I mean, they could theoretically bite you, but there's no venom, nothing that you have to be worried about, and the bite wouldn't even be really bad if you got it to bite you. And I've never known a person who's actually been bitten by one.
So,
You know, you can pick them up and play with them, and yeah,
say
they
a little
look
fun
scary.
fact for a lot of people that don't realize it with bugs is the bigger they are, usually the less venomous they are. Because I know specifically like scorpions,
Yes.
tarantulas, like the bigger the scorpion is, the less venomous it's going to be because it relies on the brute strength. The smaller it is, the more you have to worry about it.
Exactly. Exactly right. Yeah, you go out to Arizona, the bark scorpions are the little ones. Like those are the ones that really, really pack a punch. The desert hairy scorpions, the big ones that everyone's freaked out about and scary, that's less than a bee sting.
Dude, even the emperor scorpions, they use those
Yeah.
for every single scary movie because they look just vicious looking. They're these big black scorpions. Those things you can let them walk on your hands, and unless you kind of get them in the wrong spot, like they really just aren't. They aren't that. But some of the smaller species, you put them on your hand, and they're going to try to sting you the second they get an opportunity to.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And
But
the emperor scorpions, even if you get stung, again, it's not going to be very bad.
no, and those ones are cool. Just as an extra fun fact, because I always like talking about this random stuff. Those are the ones you put under a black light, and they'll actually start glowing. So I've seen a lot of
Yeah.
people that do that with those things.
A lot of caterpillars in so I'm in the Boston area, and a lot of the larger Saturnid moth caterpillars that we have, they also glow under black light. So one of the ways my kids and I do this every you know, late summer, early fall, we have a moth night where we go out and we set up a white tarp in the yard and shine a couple different lights on it, and that attracts the adult moths. So you get some cool stuff. And while we're leaving that set up for a while, we wander around the neighborhood with black lights and shine them in all the trees and find the Saturnid moth caterpillars. So Cecropia, Luna moths, Polyphemus moth, those caterpillars will glow under black light, and that's the easiest way to find them.
Oh, that's super
So
cool. I didn't know that moths glow under black light. I'll have to try that with my daughter. She'd
the
probably love that.
caterpillars.
Oh,
Yeah, the
the
caterpillars do
caterpillars.
not. Yeah, it's really, really neat. And the first time you see it, it's like, oh my God, I can't, because they're big. You know, some of the Luna moths are about that big. I have about 75 Luna moth caterpillars in my house right now. Well, they're actually all cocoons now, but
Is that one of those things that it's like other bugs would see that humans can't see with our eyes when they see it? It looks like different faces and different patterns and things on it, so it will like scare predators away. Is that why it glows?
not with these ones. So it's really weird. It is a great theory, but we're actually not sure. So the entomologists that I've spoken with about this say we really don't know what benefit it gets them. We're not sure. There's a few different theories about like what you're saying. Maybe there's something that we're not seeing, but even when they've tried it under different environments and tried to look at it under different ways, they haven't exactly figured out why they do glow.
It kind of makes you wonder if it's maybe one of those things that's almost like in between a step. Like it's not the
Yeah.
full end means of what it's supposed to be, but it's in the process of developing into whatever defense mechanism it's going to be.
Exactly, exactly. That is very possible. Or it could be a secondary thing. It could be like because of the certain taste that they've got, that's causing them to glow under black light. This, bad flavor or something like that.
Say maybe even different things that they eat maybe might even kind of give that glow, but it may not be inherently them, but just because of something they're consuming, like particular types of leaves or whatever, maybe too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I know there's
Yeah.
the whole thing with like poison dart frogs that I used to sell them at the reptile store, but they're only poisonous if they're eating the specific termites,
Right.
correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. So just based on the things, and so there's a few different animals that have that, and then there's ones that get different levels of toxicity based on what they're eating.
Oh,
So
that's kind of cool. What are some examples of that? Just before we get into the cryptid stuff, I love talking about animal stuff. Obviously, they go hand in hand, but I'll get distracted
yeah.
just talking about this stuff.
So like the easiest one is the monarch caterpillars. Like as they eat more of the milkweed, they get more and more toxic.
Oh, I didn't even know that. That's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, so as the little ones, they haven't eaten much of the milkweed yet, so they're not going to be as toxic as the older ones. And then there's a few other puffer fish, I think, are another one that based like they have a certain amount of natural toxin, but then based on what they're eating, they will develop more.
What do you know what it is specifically if the jellyfish eat? Just out of curiosity, I'm a big fish guy. Like, as you can partially kind of see, I got a bunch of
Oh
tanks behind me
yeah.
over here, and I got a pea puffer tank up in the top. So I always love hearing fun
Oh,
facts about puffer fish.
I love pea puffers. Those are great. My daughter really wanted to get them for her tank, but we just they're a little bit harder to keep than we were ready to to
Oh,
go
mine will
for.
only eat live blackworms. That's it. Like I've tried the frozen
Exactly.
stuff, everything, and there's only one store in my area that sells it, so it's a task. But I got one, then I got two, and then they all for some reason stopped eating frozen stuff. So then I had to switch them over, and I started throwing some extra stuff in there to see if they would eat it, and they'll only go after snails and live blackworms. So barely that's
Oh
where I'm at with them.
man. They they're cool though. They are really, really neat.
Oh yeah, they're adorable, dude. They're like literally at full size. They're like a little little jelly bean.
Yeah, yeah. No, they're great.
And
I'm not exactly sure because I'd have to go back to my marine bio days to try to remember which the what it is that the puffer eats that gives it the extra toxin in there, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
I wonder if it's a type of crustacean because it seems like I don't know, like there seems like the primary they diet I'm assuming is like crustaceans and like snails and maybe like little worms and stuff. But I feel like ocean dwellers they're primarily eating like snails and like crabs and things like that primarily, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, there's a number of things like the sea slug, the blue gu blue glaucus? God, I can't remember, the blue
Is that
dragon.
that one that everybody puts on their hand, or you see people with it on their hand, and everybody's
Yes.
like, "No, you're gonna go to the hospital now." That
Yeah,
really,
and
really pretty looking one.
that thing eats, Portuguese man-o-wars. So it eats man-o-wars, and then it uses the toxin and the stinging cells from the man-o-war and, like, moves that into its body and then uses those stinging cells in itself. So it's, like, concentrating man-o-war toxin in its own body.
That's what we were talking about earlier. The smaller it is, the more you got to worry about it. You see this
Yeah.
adorable, cute little blue slug, and you're like, "Oh, it's adorable." And I don't know how strong those things are. I know you'll end up in the hospital, but they have enough venom to like kill an adult human.
Most likely not. I mean, there's always anything that stings, there's always the chance of someone having a bad reaction to it, but more than likely, it's just gonna land you in a world of pain.
Is it like the that pain where it's like you feel like your nerves and stuff are on fire? Just out of curiosity, like what kind of pain is it?
Yeah, so I've never gotten stung by one,
Luckily.
thankfully, but, I've caught one man-o-war, and, I didn't get stung by it. I've gotten stung by hundreds of jellyfish, but, never by a man-o-war, and, yeah, from what I've been told by other people who have, they say, yeah, you feel like your body's on fire. You just feel like everything is hurting all at once.
Ooh, I can't even
Yeah.
imagine that, man. I got devil's itch once from a sunburn, and it sounds like, oh yeah, your skin hurts from a sunburn, but it was probably one of like the most intense pains that I felt ever, just because it's like your whole skin feels like it's on fire. Like I can't imagine what it would feel like to feel that throughout your entire body, because I know devil's itch is like partial nerve damage. You feel it like through your nerves, and it doesn't soothe. So it's like I was sitting there with like ice on my back, and it still like was not good enough. But ooh, that pain through your whole body, I can't even
Yeah.
imagine that, man.
No, no, I got, Loa Loa worm when I was in the Central African Republic. So, like, a tsetse fly bites you and you get injected you get this parasite, and, a couple days later, my entire body itched, like, the palms of my hands, the tips of my fingers, your face, like, the bottoms of your feet, everything is just completely itchy for about 12 hours. Like, you're just in constant and it's because you've got worms that are just all in your blood and they're all dying, and it's just like your body is reacting to these dead worms. And
Do
if
you
you
have
get
to go
infected.
to the hospital for that, or is it like they just die off and then they kind of push out of your body?
Yeah, you'll just flush them all out. If you get it like once or twice or 3 times or 4, but if you get it multiple times and there isn't like a magic number, it's not like, "Oh, the 4th one, you gotta really watch out." But if you get infected with it multiple times, that's the one where you'll be talking to someone and see an adult worm crawl across their
Ooh.
eye, and
Just
that's when you
since
have
you
to go to
brought
the
that up
doctor.
too, before we end up getting into all the cryptid stuff that I keep saying, I got to ask this question now too. Since you've traveled around the world, been to all these different places, as far as I don't want to say diseases, but like things that you can get sick from, like what's like the most crazy thing that you've come across? Because that's pretty crazy seeing a worm in somebody's eye. But like, what's you think that's the craziest thing you've come across?
The Loa Loa worm was I have an irrational fear of parasites. I will say that there are 2 things that I have an irrational fear of. One is radiation and one is parasites. I used
I
to
mean, they're
work in a
two good
lab.
things to be irrationally afraid of. I mean,
Yeah, but like I know intellectually that riding on an airplane, I would get exposed to more radiation than when I went into our hot lab. Like I worked in a microbiology lab and chemistry lab, and we had a radioactive room, and I would go in there and I'd get heart palpitations. I'd like hold my breath. I'd walk in and I just hated it. And I know intellectually that I'm getting exposed to less radiation in there than I was, flying on a plane. But it still just freaked me out. So that's an irrational fear. And then parasites are the same thing. Getting the Loa Loa worm really freaked me out. But I've gotten a lot of different kind of close calls with different parasites. I've had bot flies around me. I never had one grow in me, which was fortunate.
Oh,
But
yeah.
then I got a really nasty stomach bug in Sumatra, and I got another one in Africa that kind of laid me out for a while. And those were, I mean, it's I won't say that it's completely unavoidable, but I don't know anyone who's gone to these places and hasn't gotten something like that. So yeah, I'd say that the kind of mystery stomach illnesses were probably the worst.
That's probably one of the scariest things about traveling the world because it sounds like such a fun thing, and I would definitely love to do it. And I feel like the pros would outweigh the cons, but that's my irrational fear in the back of my head is just contamination from anything. Because I know that there's a lot of different countries you cannot drink the water, you can't do these particular things. Like that, that would be my fear. Is just I would be so isolated into like this is my food, this is all I'm opening. I'm afraid to open other things.
Yeah, the craziest thing, Coca-Cola. You can get Coca-Cola everywhere in the world. In the most remote locations in the Amazon, someone would come by in a canoe and have like a 24 pack of Coke. It was the weirdest thing, but that was always safe.
At least you got your
So
taste
I
of home,
did.
at least, right?
Yeah, yeah. It was way better because it was like the real sugar
Yep.
stuff, and yeah, it was great. So
I'm hearing
yeah,
that they're switching that over apparently everywhere because they do something during Passover where they do the yellow tops and those ones
I've
have the
read,
real sugar
yeah.
in them. And those would always sell out so fast that I think it's supposed to be happening next year. But Coke is supposedly going to be the first brand that's supposed to switch over to using actual cane sugar for the regular base of their soda
Oh, there
now.
we
So
go.
that's going to be kind of cool because that's my preferred one. But
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Coca-Cola and beer. Those are the two things that are safe to drink, and that everywhere that I was going. So yeah, there are a lot of things with insects, as vectors for things. Like I took a lot of anti-malarials. I took every vaccine that I could possibly get, and every anti-malarial, anything like that. I was taking. But the other thing is, anywhere that I go, I would try to find the area with the most spiders because I wanted to be like if there was a hut, if there was a tent, if there was anything that had a ton of spiders in it, I was like, that's my room because they're gonna eat all the bugs that I don't want to bite me. So
yeah, everybody
cover
hates
cover
spiders,
me in
not realizing how
spiders.
much good they actually do. Like
Oh
daddy
yeah.
longlegs, everybody smashes those things. They'll take out just about everything in your house.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, I will catch spiders and bring them into my house. I'll catch them outside and bring them in, and like every corner of my house has little piles of bugs because the spiders are dropping them all down. And I was like, look at that, no mosquitoes in here, nothing that's gonna hurt us.
See, I started doing a thing where when I find house spiders, I just put them in my plants now. So I got a bunch of like monsteras and everything growing out of my fish tanks. My girlfriend has a bunch of house plants over there. So whenever I find them now, the kids are like, "Oh, smash it!" I won't smash it. I'll just scoot it onto a thing and I'll put it on the plants.
Oh yeah, yeah, put them over there. Absolutely, no, they are one of the most helpful things to have around. So
And
that was
I
kind of
guess, whoops, sorry. Since we're talking about bugs too, just out of curiosity too, have you come across any like cryptid insects or like any folklorish insects through any of your studies? Because I know that it's not something that's typically talked about. As far as I've been in like the cryptid community, there's not really much talk of like cryptid bugs, for example. Other
yeah,
than
they're
giant spiders, of course, in Vietnam. That one's
absolutely.
pretty common, but
They're not like the big sexy animals, right? They're not the ones that people get super into and really want to talk about. But when I'm traveling, there's always stories about like just there are bug stories about things that we don't have a scientific name for. So in my mind, that puts it into the category of a cryptid. Because until we have a scientific name for this, until we have the holotype species somewhere where it's described and identified, then it's a cryptid, right? So when people would tell me about these like giant moths that they'd be seeing, and I'd be listening to it and go, okay, that doesn't sound like an atlas moth, and it doesn't sound like, and I'm going, it's probably some type of saturnid. So I'd get really excited, and then the producers would be like, "Ah, we're not going to film anything about these bugs. We're not going off on a separate adventure to find this species of praying mantis that you think might be new." So I've got to get back over there with some entomologists
yeah, I was
to
gonna say
review.
that's like a partially untapped market because I mean most of the new discoveries coming out of new animals is typically either some type of fish or some type of insect.
Yeah.
And at least being in the aquarium hobby, I mean, there are numerous different types of fish that don't even have common names. Like, I'm a big fan of plecos, and there are like hundreds of different species of
Oh man.
plecos that are just
Yeah.
called L230, L165. Like,
Yeah.
they don't even have a common name. And I mean, that's like the untapped market, man. If this show is trying to go somewhere and actually discover something that's been undiscovered, that's what you got to go after, man.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And my daughter wants to be an entomologist, so I think she's she's all down. She wants to get out there and find this stuff too.
Well, the good news is you at least have some of the educational background for it. So when she starts getting to that age where she goes off into college and she goes off and starts doing her own adventures, maybe you'll be able to tag along and bring a little film crew with you.
That's what I'm hoping for. Absolutely.
Carry on the name, but just in a different way. Instead of dealing with straight biology, just insects. But hey,
Yeah.
like I said, opening up a new chain of things because start talking about cryptid insects. Maybe she'll be the first one that discovers these giant spiders that are supposedly under the ground in Vietnam, like I mentioned.
Yeah. Yeah, and my wife is Vietnamese, so there's we've had a couple different we've had a couple different potentials to go over to Vietnam and look for cryptids. And the show has unfortunately never panned out, but I'm really hoping that one of the ones in the future, because her father has some great stories about the rock apes
Oh, I was just about to
that were
ask about
supposedly
those.
seen. Yeah, yeah, and Cone Rit. I've asked them about Cone Rit as well, the giant aquatic centipede. Oh, so there's a cryptid insect. There we go, Cone
Oh
Rit.
yeah, perfect. That's
The
what I was about to say.
Yeah, it's a giant aquatic centipede that's supposedly seen in Ha Long Bay in Vietnam. So, and I've asked him about that as well, and he's had some really cool stories there too. So, I would love to get over there and do. There's at least 3 episodes worth of stuff that I think that we could get in Vietnam for cryptids.
I mean, so at least talking about that centipede too, because I'd love to hear some of these stories that he's kind of passed on to you about it. But just as a biologist, like how much like stock or validity do you put behind that concept? Because I know bugs, it seems like they have the possibility to get that big, but adding the aquatic factor to it, like how do you kind of place it in your head?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think so. So the legends are, that it's 30, 40 feet long, that kind of thing. And like that's not really possible. That's not possible biologically. Like the giant lobsters that we have, that's about as big as an arthropod is going to get, even underwater. So like there is the possibility to have some kind of giant centipede looking thing. Like there's a few different worms that would meet that a lot more than an arthropod would.
Do you think it might
Or
be potentially like a misidentified snake? Because I know that's like a whole other line of cryptids to begin with, are these giant aquatic snakes, but that's a motif you see all around the world. So maybe misplacing it from seeing it might be another one of these giant aquatic snakes people see.
it is potential. The potential. I think more along the lines, just based on the descriptions and based on what he's said about the body structure of it and stuff. It sounds to me more like some type of oh god, I'm probably gonna use the wrong name, but some type of the fireworm, like some of those. There's these huge polychaete worms that do get 6, 7, 8 feet long, that have a sting, a really, really bad sting to them, and it's supposed to feel like a burn when they sting you. And I'm sure that there are ones that we haven't found yet. I'm sure there are some species of this. One of the most famous ones is the bobbit worm that a lot of people have heard of. Like the Lorena bobbit, that whole thing. But the bobbit worm has these massive pinchers and they're really cryptic. They hide really, really well in the aquarium trade. I think a lot of people have accidentally introduced them to their aquariums and wondered why some fish have gone missing, and it was bobbit worms coming out to get them.
Are
So
those something that's like in the same family as like the hydras and stuff? Those like things that sit on the bottom up underneath the soil and they're like ambush predators?
yeah, I've never so Hydra. Common names always kind of screw with me a little bit, but Hydra I've always heard as the really small, almost microscopic. Oh God, I
They
can't
almost kind of look
remember.
like a trident, and they like sit at the bottom of the water and they wait for stuff to kind of brush on them, and then that's when they like will attack
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, but they get huge. Like the bobbit worms get 3 feet long, that kind of thing.
Whew, that sounds horrifying.
Yeah, they're pretty nuts. But there's these fireworms as well, and yeah, I'm trying to even think of where, but they are in Southeast Asia. I can't remember the exact location, but yeah, no, there's my guess with Cone Rit is that it's an exaggerated version of probably some type of polychaete worm.
So I know that this is kind of in a totally completely different area, but the whole like sinkhole Sam thing, is this kind of maybe some of the stock that you might put behind that, especially because it was like a one-off thing, the lake dried up and then it just disappeared. Like maybe somebody may have introduced something like this to that area because it seems like it kind
I'm
of
not
fits
familiar with that one.
somewhat of the motif. Yeah,
Yeah,
Sinkhole Sam was basically this they described it as like almost like a big like eel worm looking thing that would live in this lake. And they people that live there would come up and they'd give it like chicken, they'd give it all these like random things to eat, and it would just eat the food and then go back down in the lake. And then eventually at some point this lake basically dried out and Sinkhole Sam was never seen again. But they described it as this like big aquatic worm like looking thing.
Oh man, I got to look that up. I got to check that out. No, I've never heard of that one. That's a new one for me.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
that
look
might be
that
one
up.
you might even be able to investigate somewhat in your own backyard at least. But I mean,
Yeah.
that one I think that was back in, if I'm not mistaken, like the 60s or the 70s. So you might be lucky enough that if you want to investigate that area, there might still be some people around that may have actually experienced Sinkhole Sam firsthand.
Do you know where that was?
I think it's Kentucky, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. I'm gonna be there.
Let me
That's
look it up just for the sake of having it for you.
that's awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna be at CryptidCon next month, and that's in Lexington, Kentucky.
Uh, trying to bring it up here. I think it says Kansas. Sorry.
Oh,
Yep,
Kansas. All
Kansas.
right. All right. Hey, no, that's yeah, that's excellent. I'll look that up. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, just because I have it up already, I can show you what I'm talking about. Let's see here. Yeah, see, kind of looks like almost like a worm.
Oh, there we go. All right. That almost looks like some kind of like amphispium. Oh, okay. So maybe a little like a siren or so there's a couple things that live in Florida that look a little bit like that, and they're actually amphibians.
I mean, that would make sense with this thing, especially because if the lake dried up and this thing disappeared, I mean, a lot of
Yeah,
people kind of theorized that it lived in maybe some like underwater like caves and caverns and stuff that were under the lake. But I mean, if it was amphibian, I mean, maybe it just left the water.
yeah, yeah. Oh, that's weird. No, I'll have to check that out. That's really cool. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I guess kind of starting to wrap into your book, since we've kind of covered a lot of your past adventures, we definitely have to dive into some of the newer stuff that you were working on. So, uh, with your newer books, what exactly are you starting to dive into now?
So totally different than the other ones. I'm been working on. So I have one kids book that I've fully written, and that I'm now getting some illustrations done for, and I'm hoping to have that published within the next year or two. So that was a really fun experience. That was something very different for me as writing for kids, because the books that I've written, they have some language in them. I'll say so. Like my kids' teachers asked me to come in and do a reading, and I was like, you may want to hold off on that one.
Let
But
me
this,
find like a PG section first. Let
yeah,
me just highlight some
exactly.
PG sections, and then we'll just use these for when you ask me.
Yeah. But this kids book that I wrote, I'm really happy with it, and my kids love it, and I think that this could be a lot of fun. So it all started with my kids talking about the Easter Bunny and talking about Easter, and they were wondering how there's a whole we have a great mythos about everything around Christmas, right? Like the Christmas holiday, there's a lot of stuff around that. But Easter, like the Easter Bunny, is kind of this mystery. So they were like, okay, so as a biologist, like how do you approach the Easter Bunny? So the book is like a very lighthearted, kind of fun way of approaching the Easter Bunny, and it brings into a lot of the animals around Massachusetts and around New England that might or might not interact with something like that. So that was a lot of fun. That was very different to write, and I'm hoping that that finds a home really soon. And then I have a couple books that are still in the earlier stages. One is a little bit more of a young adult style book, and again, my I'm used to writing nonfiction, so jumping into the world of fiction. And then another one is a little bit more into the more paranormal side of all this stuff. So I've kept it very crypto up to this point. I've kept it very biology based, and this is my attempt at taking my experiences with the supernatural and putting them down on paper into fictionalizing the accounts enough, I think, to make it a little bit more entertaining for folks.
Well, I mean, considering that you kind of started to flip up some of your ideas on some of the stuff, I'd love to get into some of the root experiences that inspired you to write the book.
Um, so it's yeah, these are some different things. So one was when I was a teenager. there's this supposed haunted cemetery in upstate New York where I grew up, and it's the Pinewood Cemetery. Is It was always ranked when we were growing up as the third most haunted cemetery in the country. I have no idea how they get that ranking. Like, where do you get the third most? But it is
It's
really
whoever
weird.
claims it. That's how that
Yeah,
works, right?
yeah, exactly, exactly. But I mean, why go for third then? Why didn't they just say that it was the second most
They were the
haunted?
third to claim it. That's why.
Okay, all right, there we go. That would make more sense. That sounds like upstate New York in the 80s. Yeah, we were third to it, so
We are the third most haunted because we didn't claim it first. Because
right.
clearly the most haunted place has to have claimed it first because they have the most stuff going on.
Yeah. But there's all these cool stories and all these cool legends growing up about, like, there's a mausoleum in there that would supposedly sink into the ground and then rise. And one of our friends who lived near the cemetery claimed that they could see it sinking, they could see it coming up. And genuinely, when we would drive by it as kids, sometimes you could see the mausoleum and sometimes you couldn't. And then there were these stories about, like, all the classic stuff from haunted cemeteries. The sound of babies crying, blood underneath certain stones, and so I got up the nerve as a young teenager with my sister and a bunch of her friends to go in there, and we heard and saw some things that I don't have a logical explanation for. We heard some noises that I know all of the local animal sounds, and I cannot equate this to any animal. It it didn't sound human either, but there was a very, odd kind of repetitive sound of something screaming. There were patches of the cemetery where nothing would grow, despite there being, tons of vegetation everywhere else. And then in certain patches, there would be nothing growing there at all. And we just had some weird stuff in there, I'll say. And one night driving back, we did see an unusual light hovering above the cemetery with just this one kind of, you know, for lack of a better word, orb in the sky with one beam of light shining out of it and shining onto the cemetery. And this is definitely not a helicopter. There's no helicopter sounds. There's nothing like that. So to a 15, 14-year old at the time, that left a big impression in my mind as to what this could be and what the explanation for this could be. And I've never come up with something that was, completely satisfactory to me. So I figured I could take something like that and fictionalize it into an interesting story.
Do you think that some of these experiences when you were a kid with the more like paranormal side of things kind of inspired you to get into cryptozoology? Even though I know you kind of look at it more from like a scientific basis, but do you think that events like this kind of inspired the idea that there could be unexplainable things out there for you?
Oh, I think that they were both happening at the same time. So I was very into cryptozoology and I was very into the unexplained sides of biology at the same time that I was interested in anything that was potentially paranormal or supernatural happening as well. So I think that there was a natural fascination to anything that we couldn't explain. That's why I became a marine biologist. When I'd ask questions about the deep ocean, I couldn't get any answers from people. So I wanted to go out there and find those answers for myself. So, and I think it was the same thing with anything like this. I found a cottonmouth snake, so a water moccasin, about 200 miles north of where they're commonly accepted to be found. And I had this confirmed by a herpetologist that it absolutely was. I found the first barracuda ever caught in Maine when I was
Oh
16.
wow.
Yeah, yeah. People don't think about barracuda in Maine, but yeah, I found one, and this again, it was confirmed. We sent off the sample to have it genetically analyzed and determined, and yeah, it came back. This was the first barracuda found in Maine. So I was getting these unanswered questions to biological questions, or I wasn't getting answers to questions that I had in biology, and I was learning that there's a lot that we still don't know about that. And then I was also having these, like, interesting, you know, I find it hard to call them supernatural or paranormal because I still think that there is a logical explanation. I just don't know it yet. I just haven't found it yet.
And I mean
Like,
that's a lot of the hard stuff with it too, is that or at least with my research, I feel like there's always like for a lot of like the weird stuff, I try to come up with the most like analytical explanation on what it could possibly be first before I start getting to the point of like, all right, we're dealing with something extremely strange here. But even when you are dealing with something strange, like the Sasquatch stuff, I mean, I definitely get into like the possibility of there being like a more paranormal aspect to Sasquatch. But of course, I try to hit it first from a more natural perspective on like what could possibly be happening with these things. Like, but the hard part with them is that I don't really quite know where to place them, whether I want to relate them more to being more ape like or more human like. So it's kind of hard to know where exactly to differentiate it at. But a lot of these abilities that people might see as paranormal, these things that people might see as paranormal, I feel like there might be good natural explanations for them, but they're just things that we haven't quite figured out yet because it's that same concept that a lot of things that were considered magic have now become science with more understanding. And I think that with a lot of this more paranormal or woo woo side to cryptozoology or just paranormal in general, we may not be there yet, but in another like 50 years, and we maybe understand like quantum dynamics a little bit more, then maybe some of this paranormal stuff will make more sense because that's kind of where I gear it towards. I don't think it's something magical or this or that. I think it's something that's more on like a quantum, like theoretical science level right now. But again, with more understanding, we'll eventually get there.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly where I am as well. That is where I land with all of this stuff, and that's where the Mongolian deathworm sounds absolutely outrageous when you first present this. When you talk about some worm-like creature in Mongolia that can electrocute people and that can blow up. And oh, did I lose you?
No, I'm still here. My
Oh,
camera
okay.
went out. I was just trying to fix
Oh,
my
sorry about
camera.
that. So it sounds outrageous. It sounds like there's nothing that could possibly, and it can shoot blood and it can explode but then as you start to look at it, you start to really break this down. You find animals that we scientifically know can do every single thing that they describe. So there's horned lizards that can shoot hot blood out of their eyes. There's bombardier beetles that can shoot acid to deter predators. There's blowfish, like the burrfish, that actually can explode. They can overinflate themselves and accidentally explode. And there are some ant species that do explode. They can completely explode themselves to keep a predator away from the colony. Like they'll sacrifice themselves to try to save the colony. So you do find all of these different traits. Like, do I think that we're going to find all of those traits in one animal in the Mongolian deathworm? No, I don't. But it's still you do start to see the possibilities there. And the same thing, like the sound that we heard in the cemetery. Do I actually think that this was something supernatural, or was this just a really unusual sound from a red fox, for instance? Yeah, probably it was just an unusual sound for a red fox. But when you're 13, 14, 15, however old I was going in there, that plants something in your mind and plants this idea of the unknown and something that sticks with you. So I do always look for those rational and logical explanations for things, and it doesn't make them any less exciting. My great uncle Charles Fort was the first one to really document ball lightning, and people laughed at him. People thought that this was impossible. That people talk about ghost lights and, oh, there's no way that you can have this ball of electricity that can pass through a window without harming it and then kill someone who's asleep in their bed. And it sounds crazy, but it happens. We know for a fact now that there is, we have documented ball lightning, and we know that this is there. And there's a lot of these other natural phenomena that really do occur.
Just to throw this in too, since you were brought up ball lightning, I of course have to bring up the whole concept of like orbs and everything.
Yes.
Obviously, not all orbs are ball lightning. Like it's not that frequent, and it seems like these happen in particular places when you're dealing with particular types of creatures and beings. So, just out of curiosity, when you've been out there doing things, particularly Sasquatch or even any other cryptids or anything, have you noticed any type of like association with seeing like weird orbs or lights with any of these things, like
I
for
haven't.
yourself?
Yeah, I have to say, no, I've never observed anything like that associated with the creatures that I was looking for. I have to say the most kind of freaked out that I was in Brazil. We were in an area right on the border of an uncontacted tribe. So I had to get special permission from the government of Brazil, and I had to get a full physical, and we had to get licenses and everything to go to meet with the one tribe that we were with, the Karichiana tribe. And they were on the border of lands that then, if we went any further, there's uncontacted tribes. So they have no contact with the West whatsoever. And if you go into there, you need to like, well, you can't. No one from the West actually can go in there. But even this tribe themselves, like they would very rarely come across the people who live there. So we were on this kind of borderline zone, and there was something really, really powerful about the land there. There's just something that you feel that kind of in your reptile brain triggers you into like, this is unusual. This is not something that I'm used to seeing, or there's something here. If you've ever been in old growth rainforest or any sort of old growth forest, I would say it's that same kind of feeling. Like you definitely have a sense that there's something else there. And we heard a call of an animal that is exactly how people describe the Mapinguari call. And the guides that we were with, who are, hunters and know the forest extremely well, they got really, really nervous. You could see them just go pale and look at each other, and they were like, we have to leave, we have to leave right now. And we were like, what was that? Was that a, is that a leopard? Is that? And they were like, no, 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 we have to get out of here, we have to go right now, we can't be here. And we were like, is that a Mapinguari? Like, did we actually just hear a Mapinguari? And they just kind of looked at each other and they were like, we have to go.
What is that exactly? 'Cause I've never
The
heard of that before.
the Mapinguari is a it's so there, if you speak with someone in the cities, they'll tell you that it's this giant 20-30 foot tall creature with one eye in the middle of its face, and it has a mouth in its chest, and it gives off this horrendous scent that the smell can kill you just from smelling it. And if you see the Mapinguari, you will die. Like, you immediately just drop dead. Excuse me, it's so horrifying. So
So
that
how do they
sounds
know
like,
what it looks like? That's a hard
exactly,
question.
exactly. So it sounds like a movie monster, and you're thinking like, okay, so this thing, there's no way that this, But then when you go into the areas where this animal's supposedly spotted and talk to the people in the different tribes who are there, the Satare Mawe people, the Karichianas, and others, they'll give you a story of an animal that is, 7 to 8 feet tall, that has the instead of the eye and the forehead, it has a very unusual shaped face that kind of, it's what they eventually describe is a giant ground sloth.
Oh, I
And
was gonna say, I
everything,
wonder if it was a giant dinosaur, because it seems like with a lot of these uncontacted tribe type areas, I feel like there might be some pretty good grounds for these dinosaurs that are still around.
so in this instance, everything that they go with is, it sounds like a giant ground sloth. They describe it as having backwards facing feet, and we know that they had, the prints that we have found from giant ground sloth have the toes curled underneath, so it would walk in that way. It has the scent glands that current day sloths have, and the ground sloths that we were able to observe on the Isle of Hispaniola that lived up until, like, hundreds of years ago. I forget, but there's really good accounts of them there. Not giant ground sloths, but regular, smaller ground sloths. Everything that they're describing ends up really meeting with the description of a giant ground sloth. And I went in there thinking this is going to be a great legend, a great story. And I left there thinking like, oh my God, there are probably surviving populations of giant ground sloths in the Amazon. And what really solidified that in my mind was I was the first Westerner who was told one of the creation myths of the tribe down there. And in their creation story, they have, all animals emerged from the earth, and all animals are made of mud. So humans and every other animal that you've ever seen were all made of mud. And that's why we can eat each other, and we can digest each other, and because we're all made of the same substance, except the Mapinguari. The Mapinguari is made of a different material, and it can't have any interaction. And if you see or hear a Mapinguari, you don't die, but you have to leave that area. You have to leave that area. You and your entire tribe have to leave and never go back to that area. So now we're talking about, this massive region of the Amazonian rainforest, and it's difficult for anyone in the West to get to the area where I was, and it's impossible to get to the areas that are more on the interior. So the only people who are in there, we know giant ground sloths were hunted to extinction. We know they were killed off by people. But if there are pockets in the Amazonian rainforest where there's a creation mythos that has grown up around these creatures for hundreds, thousands of years, where they're essentially creating sanctuaries. If
That's
you
what I was
hear
about to
one and
say.
see one and leave the area, and then there's no other people around, and anyone who hears one or sees one leaves the area, they're creating a sanctuary, so it would be able to survive to modern times.
It almost makes you wonder if somebody at some point was like either one, it was like they were afraid of these things because they thought that they're going to end up attacking them at night or whatever, or on the other side of it, maybe people kind of knew that these things were kind of starting to dwindle down, so they start these stories in order to kind of keep people away from the area. But I mean that's like a prime perfect example of what I was even talking about with some of the dinosaur stuff, because a lot of these like uncontacted tribes that have these like, they don't call them dinosaurs, but when we kind of line them up with things that we're aware of, we kind of view them as dinosaurs. Kind of has the same thing. You hear these things in the area, you leave. Come in contact with anything that looks like it in the area, you completely leave.
You
So
leave.
if you
Yeah.
have these tribes that are uncontacted to begin with, and then they have these stories about if you see this weird creature, you just leave. At that point, I feel like some of these jungles and some of these Amazon rain or some of these rainforests are almost as ripe with the possibility of there being these creatures as the ocean is at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's no one there. Because there's no one going anywhere near them. Yeah. And I really think that eDNA is going to be the best tool in our toolkit to start to really find some of this stuff. So we talk about going out and finding new insect species, and I am all for that and think that it's, I hope my daughter gets the opportunity to do that. But I really think that eDNA that we've got now with, you don't have to come in contact with the animal. You can take water samples from the river, you can take samples from the local area, run it through a database and get the DNA hits of what is actually there. And I think that is such an underutilized tool in biology and of course in cryptozoology.
Dude, talk about yeah, I was gonna say that's like, it seems like the ultimate tool to use if you have an area that you are like, yep, there are Sasquatch in this area, dude. I'd be taking samples of every possible thing I could in the area to try to
Yes.
test that out to see what kind of DNA it comes up with. Because I know you typically get the undefined male DNA with female human DNA, but I mean, if you already kind of know somewhat of what to look for, you may not know what that male DNA is, but at least you can line it up hopefully with some of the previous genetic stuff people have collected.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's the financing is getting better, where it's getting to be it's 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 been reducing. The cost has been going down to the point where there is really the potential to start doing this. I'd say within the next like year or two, people will be able to do this and will be able to afford this. Like someone who's really passionate about this and wants to sponsor these expeditions, I think there will be a way to do it.
And I mean, at least for like the Sasquatch stuff, I mean, I feel like that's one of the main ones that people are going to be going after, especially if they have that DNA. And just to bring it up, since last time we were talking, I know that we kind of towards the end, I was asking you about Bigfoot and your kind of belief on Bigfoot. And you're basically saying that as much as you wanted to believe, you kind of feel like if we would have caught up with it by now, it would have already happened. Um, it's been a little bit of time since the last time we talked. Do you still kind of feel that way? And if so, well, if not, I guess, what type of area do you think would have the most validity, at least from your research, to having these things? So that, maybe if somebody wants to collect some funds and put one of those tests together, maybe we can single out that area and start seeing if we can actually get to the root of this whole North American Sasquatch thing.
Yeah, so I do think central and western Canada is the most likely case. That is the most likely spot. That's the spot where I would have the hardest time saying that we know what's up there because we don't. We that's there's still enough area to hide and enough places to where people just aren't going there. And there's
The
enough
whole
area.
top north of Canada is basically vacant. Like you look at the demographic maps and it's like all the bottom half of Canada like touching the US, and then all the top half is like almost no population.
Yeah, and there's no way in. Those are the ones where you have to take, a seaplane in and out in order to get anywhere. And there, the lack of human habitation, the availability of resources up there, that's where I do think that you have the most chance of having some type of North American bipedal hominid. I'm still not 100% convinced, just because again, every year that goes by without some really, really great evidence, I am open to it. I'm open to the possibility, but and I know that there's a lot of really amazing researchers out there, and there are friends who are absolutely convinced, and people who I respect massively who have seen something. Um, I just I'm not I don't have enough to be there exactly yet, but I do think that that's the area where I can't argue against it.
See, I think what we're kind of falling into now is I feel like there was a lot more of these beings, whatever they happen to be, around 100, 200 years ago. But as we're starting to catch up with the technology to actually catch up with these things, I kind of feel like their numbers are starting to slowly dwindle down because a lot of the sightings that people are starting to talk about now, they're relatively closer to the city. And it seems like with a lot of animals, once they start coming relatively closer to the city, that's like when they're on their last leg and they're about to start becoming extinct because they're running out of stuff to to eat, to whatever they happen to need out in the wild. So I feel like, for me at least, I put a lot of stock and validity behind the whole Sasquatch idea. But I think that as we're getting farther in time, it's not that we're necessarily pulling away from it where it never existed in the first place. I think that we're not catching up to it fast enough for it to slowly start dwindling down in numbers.
I could absolutely see that. That is exactly what I say about orang pendek. I think that orang pendek in Sumatra, I do absolutely believe it was there in the 1920s. And I think that if there are any still there now, they are older, they are an aging population, and there's far fewer than there were even 30, 40 years ago. So yeah, I feel the exact same way. Like what you're describing about Sasquatch is what I would say for orang pendek.
And I mean, once you start getting your back against the wall too, when they're trying to reproduce, I know that with a lot of different animals in the animal kingdom, it works out a little bit differently. But if you're dealing with like Sasquatch type beings, I'm going to assume these things are closer to us or like primates. So once they start getting into those groups where the numbers dwindle down, when it comes to reproducing, the numbers are going to get worse because they're reproducing with close relatives. Because,
Yeah.
like I said, I'm going to assume with Sasquatch that if they reproduce with their cousins, second cousins, that it's going to end up partially deformed because I'm going to assume that they're that close to humans.
Yep, I would agree with that. Yeah, and I think that we did start to see that in cheetah populations. So there was this huge risk that even though there were still I think it was like less than 500 individuals, I believe, at one point, and we were starting to see genetic deformities in the new offspring because the cheetah population had gotten so small, and then they were able to bring in cheetahs from a different region, and through like very careful breeding of making sure that they weren't getting closely related pairs, they were able to kind of bring the population back and introduce a lot more diversity in them. But again, that was with a lot of human intervention, which we obviously don't have in a species that we haven't documented.
Well, I mean, with Sasquatch, at least, obviously, you have all these legends of them taking females from tribes for years and years and years. But once society has evolved to a point where you can't snatch up females like that, otherwise, you have an entire group of people combing the woods, then it probably gets a little bit harder for them to keep those numbers up. Because I definitely think that if there is the possibility of Sasquatch out there, some of these missing 411 cases are more than likely probably results of them. But also, with them being clearly somewhat more on the intelligent side, I'm sure that they're fully aware of the fact that if they attack anybody, they take anybody, they do any of this stuff, that their entire area is going to be basically uninhabitable for however long. Because when a search team comes out, they don't find anything. They keep sweeping for weeks and weeks. So if they do anything, it's not like it used to be where they can basically just take somebody and run off in the woods and nobody's coming after them because the legends say don't chase after that.
Yeah, yeah. So the ability to interbreed would be really, really interesting to me because that's
Shows how close they are.
well, some biologists use that to define a species, right? So if you can breed and produce a viable offspring, then you are the same species. That there's certainly no scientific consensus on this. There's no scientific consensus on how to define the species in general, and I find that fascinating. I
It's
find
kind of
that
like the whole
entire
thing with
topic
like you can put a
fascinating.
lion and a tiger together, they make a liger, but that one doesn't reproduce, right?
Right, right. So you're not producing a viable offspring. You're not producing an offspring that can then mate and have other offspring of its own. A mule, we've been able to produce for generations, but a mule is sterile. It can't reproduce.
Is there anything that just before we continue on, is there anything that we've been able to mix or that we've seen that mix that is able to carry on?
So yeah, I mean, so that's where you get down into, are these actually different species, or do we have different like breeds? Is it just like the different appearances? Or that's where, it becomes really, really hard to see if we can define something as a unique species. Because if they can interbreed and produce a viable offspring, then we would say, oh well, they were the same species. But when we look at humans, when we look at our own genes, we do have a very, very small percentage of Neanderthal genes. So at some point, an early hominid species was able to breed with a Neanderthal and produce viable offspring because we are the result of that. Every human on Earth right now has a very, very small percentage of Neanderthal DNA. And there are some who would say that we have a small percentage of other hominid DNAs as well. So
I've
at
heard a
what
few theories of saying that there were like not hundreds, but like there was like a pretty good handful of different species, and they all eventually kind of just blended together into what we know today as Homo sapien.
Yeah, yeah. So and that is one of the prevailing theories. There's a few others that Homo sapiens were outcompeted all of the other ones, but that there was enough interbreeding in order for us to absorb to continue to go on with some of those traits. So then we would get into, okay, so were we actually different species, or is this really all the same species and there was just different phenotypes, different looks to them?
Almost kind of like the idea of how we would see like races today almost, but like an old world variation of that.
I mean,
So obviously
more
you can
so.
reproduce with anybody from every different race, even though they look completely different than you, but we all share the same, carry the same common motif. Could it almost be kind of viewed the same way, but in the past, that all these different things that we're looking at as different types of humans may have all been almost like different races of humans. They all were carrying the same genetics, but just looked visibly different.
So that would be where they'd get into the phenotype versus genotype. Like, so is this truly just a different look, or were these different species? And that's where I do not know where I stand on the definition of a species, on being able to truly define when a unique species is there. We're trying to use genetics to do that. We're trying to use the appearances. I think that to define a species takes a little bit more than that. I think that it is more of an art than a science at this point.
Yeah, I mean, prime
Um,
example, look at hyenas. They're more canine, but they also still fit into the feline category. Like,
and that's there's a great Richard Dawkins quote. He may be quoting someone else, but I read it from Dawkins where he says, "There is no perfect rabbit. There is no epitome of rabbit. It's not like there was one day there was an animal that wasn't a rabbit, and then it had an offspring, and it was all of a sudden that's a rabbit. It's just the idea that all animals are in a constant state of evolution. Everything is constantly evolving, and you never look that dissimilar from your parents. So if you take a snapshot in time of any animal, it's going to look very similar to all of the other ones around there at that time. It's offspring, it's grandchildren, it's great grandchildren, it's great grandparents. They're all going to look about the same. But if you go a million years in either direction, they're going to look completely different. And
I
now,
mean,
do
look
we
at
call
dog
them a different
species,
species?
even like
Well,
100 years from now. Look at like a pit bull from the early 1900s versus now. Like they've started to change their physical features a little bit.
and those are just breeds. Those we know are the same species. Like, we know, theoretically, a Great Dane and a Chihuahua can have a viable offspring. They could breed and have have offspring that could also breed. So those are just different breeds. That's all the same species of canid. But if we look at a dog and a wolf, if I had a pug. I had a pug for 16 years. I loved him. He was one of the best animals in the world. But if we tried to breed a dog and a pug, they would no longer be able to breed and produce a viable offspring. But coyotes, we do get coy dogs. You get coyotes that can breed with some domestic dogs and produce viable offspring. So are they really different species, or are they different breeds? I don't
Is it
I don't
only
have a great
certain
answer to
breeds
that.
of dogs that can reproduce with them, or is it like any dog that could reproduce with the coyote
I
theoretically?
believe it's any.
Oh, I was kind of curious if it was only like specific breeds, because then maybe it's like a certain trait that carries on that makes it so it's able to work.
Yeah, I believe that it's any species, that it's any breed of dog. So yeah, getting into the deciding species is it's really next to impossible because there's always going to be something that that kind of comes in and throws this off. I was speaking to a marine biologist not long ago because I made a film with this guy Coyote Peterson, who's a great guy and had a lot of fun. We did a hagfish video. We went out to California and filmed hagfish. And in speaking to the marine biologist, I was saying that I on one of the shows that I did, I tried to make the argument that you can't even really call a hagfish a fish. And the person at National Geographic who's responsible for fact checking wouldn't let me say that on the air. They wouldn't let me because they said, they were like, "No, we understand that you're a marine biologist, but you still, there was a whole bunch of reasons." And I was like, "So would you back me up in this?" And he was like, "100%, I would back you up." And he's like, "In fact, I would go even further and say you can't call anything a fish. There
That's what
is
I was
no
about to
fish."
say.
Yeah.
I've heard this in the aquarium hobby all the time, that technically fish is just like an end all throw all name for stuff. Like it
Yes.
doesn't give any specific category of anything, because
Yeah.
even within quote fish, think about how wide of a variety you have within that. Like it's crazy. And well, those can't reproduce with each other, so they're clearly not all the same thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it gets really interesting. So it's an impossible, and everyone's got a very, very strong opinions on this, but I just like to keep it open and keep it interesting. But all of that came from your saying, that the legends of Sasquatch interbreeding with humans would be very, very interesting from a biological perspective, just to think about what that would say about us. Because it wouldn't just say that we were very closely related, it would say that we were the same thing. If we could reproduce and produce viable offspring, then a lot of scientists would have to say that we are the same species.
Also, like speaking theoretically, of course, when it comes to like more complex DNA, because I'm assuming that humans probably have more complex DNA than like most things on the planet. When you have the more complex DNA and then you put another more complex DNA with it, is there more of a chance that it'll like latch onto each other versus like less complex DNA for like
So
being viable to reproduce?
not necessarily at all. So it's not that humans would have more complex DNA, or we wouldn't have like a higher a bigger genome. Um, there are some animals that we think of as very, very simple, but they actually have a much larger genome than humans. So it's not really about that complexity. It's the expression of that genome. And again, it's one of those things, like we look at everything with a human bias. So we tend to think of higher and lower animals, but that's not really a thing. Like that's not, like when we say higher, we just mean more human like in some ways. So there really isn't a hierarchy in nature that exists in that way. We can't say that that one animal, like there there isn't that great chain that was always in kind of all the classic biology books. Um,
I mean, theoretically
we can
speaking, couldn't you say that everything in the ocean would be, for lack of better term, since we're kind of talking about complexity, it would be more complex because everything developed in the ocean before it came onto land? So it seems like there's ocean species that have a lot more than we have. Like I'm always saying the mantis shrimp can see colors that humans can't even see or perceive.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's some of the great shark facts, that are fascinating. Like sharks as a group are older than the North Star.
Oh, really?
Like sharks were alive on Earth before the light from the North Star was visible on
Wow.
Earth. So, so yeah, you want to talk about complexity or about longevity? Yeah. So the stuff in the ocean, yeah, there's some pretty wild things.
And color, is what was it? Color developed in animals first in the ocean, so that's also why you see a lot more complex colors in the ocean. But
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
why
like you
something
said,
like the mantis shrimp has those eyes to see those complex colors.
and I mean, that being said, too, I mean, that can almost show that I feel like there's a lot more intelligent stuff to the ocean than we're not fully aware of. Because, of course, we come into contact with dolphin, octopus, things like that. But if everything in the ocean started off before life on Earth, then I'm assuming that there probably is some probably pretty good possibilities of there being not something human like, but something of human intelligence more than likely that's under the water. And it may not necessarily be in like a humanoid form, but I'm assuming that, there might be some types of creatures that are probably low in the ocean that probably are just as intelligent as humans are.
Yeah, so even stuff that we know about that we're now just finding more information about. Like I was just reading a couple weeks ago about an AI program that was decoding gray whale speech, and they're actually finding the complexity of a gray whale language to be a true and actual language. More comprehensive and complex than human language.
Wow. Yeah. Cause I mean, if you really think about it, they've had way more time to develop their language than we have.
Yeah.
And what do we learn from Star Trek? You got to make sure that you save those whales because they're going to end up being our savior in the end, because they're the only ones that can communicate with the beings that are going to come. So,
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and that was Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy also, right? The
yep.
the dolphins.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was the dolphins. That's what it was. Yep. I mean, honestly, though, if you do kind of bring in the whole idea of intelligence factor, and it's not necessarily that things aren't as intelligent as us, it's just that they're speaking a different language and that they're in a different form. If you could figure out the language that dolphins, whales are speaking, can you imagine what you could discover about history? Especially if
Yeah.
it's a complex enough language that they're intelligent enough to actually create like concepts and theories, possibly, not just like food, wall, water,
Right.
like not just simple words, but an actual complex language with feeling and emotion behind it, dude. Like they could probably explain back to the beginning of time, at that point.
And that's what we're starting. I mean, they're just scratching the surface with gray whales, but yeah, I'm amazed by it. And to go even a step further than that, how do you define intelligence?
Because we're only
How-
looking at it from a human perspective. I always say this with Sasquatch. Like, we say Sasquatch is less intelligent than us. Why? Because it can't read books, because it can't do these things that it has no practical reason to do. We
right.
define intelligence by what we deem as important. But if you're a
Yes.
Sasquatch or any of these other beings, there is no need for you to read. There's no need for you to know how to run a machine. There's no need for any of this. But I mean, technically, there any animal in nature is smarter than us because they can survive out there, and most people cannot. So, I mean, just off of that, anything in nature in a different way is more intelligent than humans.
Yeah, and it's just that the idea of defining intelligence in any way. It's the same kind of thing as trying to define a species or trying to define a fish. You end up with so many holes and so many kind of outside, oh well, except for this, except for this, except for this, that it just starts to be impossible to
Yeah, it
try to
doesn't work
truly define what intelligence is. Yeah,
because we're just trying to look at stuff from strictly from a human perspective, but it's like we can't define things that are outside of us. Like
yeah,
I was talking about this on a show the other day, just the whole concept of consciousness, even in modern science, like we can't
yes,
define it. So who are
no,
we to even say what is conscious in the first place? Like all this stuff with AI, because you brought AI up, it's like, we're saying, oh, it's not conscious, it's not conscious. Why? We can't even define why we're conscious. Who are we to say that this thing isn't necessarily conscious?
yeah, we
If
can't
it's
even
able to
define.
respond and it knows how to react and it's self-aware, I mean, isn't that essentially what we kind of partially defined as the root of consciousness to begin with?
Yeah, we can't define where our consciousness comes from or where our sense of self comes from. I mean, there's all those theories about a non an outside consciousness that maybe we're just tapping into, that it's not an actual consciousness that's within us. So yeah, consciousness and intelligence, how do we define those? I I've been reading a lot on AI lately as well, and it's a fascinating topic. I think that Kurzweil and Yuval Harari are two of my favorite authors on it, and I like reading kind of both of them because I think Kurzweil is super positive about it and thinks that this is going to be amazing, and Harari's like, maybe not. Maybe we want to take a step back and really evaluate this. And I like getting both of those perspectives. But yeah, both of them do agree that however we define a true AI is completely subjective. We don't have an objective way to define what an artificial intelligence would be because we don't have a way to define intelligence or consciousness.
I mean, if it ends up being created and it becomes self-aware, is it even artificial at that point anyways? Because something always ends up creating something else. And I mean, this gets into this weird loop that I always kind of get stuck in where is it a matter of whatever the main group of whatever is existing in the spaces. So like right now, humans are like the apex or the ones that are existing in here. There was clearly some types of predecessors before us, and I'm assuming that there's going to there's going to be some that come after. But if you bring in the whole idea about there being advanced civilizations, be it from other places or even ones that existed on Earth, I often wonder if it's a matter of you create your predecessor and then your predecessor extincts you. And that's where we see these flows through time where just like, oh, mass extinction event, what happened? Maybe it was a matter of we created the thing that destroyed the predecessor and then it restarts this new cycle. And then they're trying to figure out their consciousness. Once they figure everything out, they start creating something else. And then that cycle just continuously goes on infinitely through time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, wasn't that Isaac Asimov? Isn't that one of his that he had with oh man, the question or the ultimate question or something like that?
I'll have to look into that. I don't think I've actually heard that before. I kind of started getting into that loop off of like Alien and stuff like that, talking about like the engineers and like the
Oh
concept of the
yeah, yeah,
engineers like
Prometheus
starting
and
themselves. And
yeah,
then I kind of continued on with it as the matter of like once you create that race, that they just destroy the last one because clearly if you create something, it's going to be better than you. That's the whole intention
yeah,
on even your offspring. You want your offspring to be better than you. The next generation is always better. So once you create something better, you become obsolete and then the cycle just continues on.
yeah, yeah.
But
No, it's great. I love it.
at least the good news is not only are you into biology, but you also studied philosophy as your minor. So at
Yeah.
least we can kind of dive into the other aspect of stuff with this. So,
Yeah, and that has helped me. People thought I was crazy at the time. Well, people still think I'm crazy, but people thought
in a
that I
good
was.
way.
People were like, philosophy, really? And I was like, yeah, I really think it's going to help me. And then, all things cryptozoology. That's really what I think it is. I think all that you're doing is combining biology and, cultural anthropology and philosophy.
Oh yeah, 100% mixed with a little bit of psychology in that mix with it too. But I
Yeah.
mean, philosophy is one of those things that, in my opinion, whether you do something with it or not after you get out of college or where you learn about it anywhere, it's one of those things that's useful throughout your entire life because it's one of those things that can help you get through tough times. It can help you mentally figure out how to get past obstacles. It can also make it so that life doesn't seem so tedious because you teach yourself to think outside to be able to theorize about what's going on in the greater realm of existence. Like there's just a realm of possibilities of things that you can do with philosophy and psychology. So if you learn either of those, I feel like they're never wasted things to learn because they fit into a million different realms of your life. Even philosophy,
Absolutely.
simply when you're going to work, understanding how people function, understanding how they think, all this type of stuff. Like it's beneficial in every aspect.
Yeah, completely agree. Yes.
But like I said, even just the coping mechanism for it, because obviously times are getting tough out there. So I feel like there would be probably a lot less people that had mental illness and mental issues and stuff if people took the time to really study like psychology and philosophy. Because I always say it's like self help without directly being self help. It like teaches you the concept without talking to you directly. So it's one of those things that like if you're embarrassed of talking to a therapist or getting into self help books or anything like that, you study psychology or philosophy, and it just will in a well-rounded way, it kind of helps you to think properly to help get you again through tumultuous times.
Absolutely. Yeah. So many of my friends that have gone into psychology have said that the original reason they wanted to get into it was to figure themselves out.
hmm I say even just to interact with other people. But dude, I'm one of those people. I got a bunch of textbooks up here. Anytime I go to a thrift store or anything like that, and I see philosophy, psychology books, textbooks, I grab them every time. I got like
Yeah.
5 or 6 different like philosophy and psychology books that were like college study books up here. Because anytime I see textbooks, dude, I just grab them. I don't even care what they are.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've got a whole bunch of marine bio stuff so that I can't bring myself to get rid of.
Yeah, that's me too. Once it's on my bookshelf, man, it's a hard copy. I'm never getting rid of it because as soon as I get
Yeah.
rid of it, that's when I'm gonna be like, oh, what book was that? I need that information from that. Yeah, you got the
There we
same thing
go.
going as me. It's stuff to the point where you probably couldn't even fit any more books in there if you wanted to.
Yep. And then there's that one too.
I got this one so stuffed that I have probably another 2 bookshelves worth of books stacked on top of this one.
Yeah. Yep. And that's after my wife convinced me to do a little bit of a clean out. But
Oh, that isn't even talking about my digital library. I
oh
prefer
yeah.
physical copies, but with all the different people I've had on the show, sometimes I want to read people's books and stuff before they come on. So I get a lot of digital copies of stuff sent to me. So I have probably just as big of a library as a digital copy.
So some of my favorite items that I own, the question of if there's a fire, what are the things that you're saving besides living beings in your house? And really, the only things that I've got are a few first edition books that I would grab. I have every one of Fort's Charles Fort's books signed by him, made out to different members of my family. I would grab all of those. I have a couple Salinger, a couple first edition Salingers, and one and a couple from Alfred Russel Wallace.
Oh man, I'm the
And
same way, dude.
that's like my top shelf. That's what I would grab.
I would try to grab as many of my books as possible. I got a couple of books on the bottom shelf. They're not like first editions or nothing, but I have a copy of the Divine Comedy and Paradise Lost that were from like one of them's from the like late 1700s and the other one's from like late 1800s. And they're one of those books that I have on the shelf, but I just don't open them or touch them because I'm afraid to touch them. But
That's
if there was ever a
amazing.
fire, dude, I'm grabbing all that I can out of the books.
Yes. Yeah, that's definitely those are two amazing ones to have as well.
At least I'll be entertained for hours while I don't have anything to do, not having a house, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess kind of starting to wind down the conversation a little bit. I know that you had some new film projects you were working on, but I know that there's not too much you can disclose yet. But at least to kind of get the listeners excited about what you got coming, why don't you give them a little bit on what you can give about your upcoming projects?
Yeah, so I have two different potential series that I've been working on developing for about a year now. They've been in kind of pre-development, and it seems like at least one of them is starting to move forward. So I can't really say networks or production companies, but I will say fairly well-known production companies, and the topics would be getting back into my crypto roots. So one is a incredible across the world cryptozoology adventure focusing on a specific group of cryptids. And the other one would be more into the topics actually that we've been discussing today around like the AI nature of consciousness, kind of the stranger things out there that we're just starting to really understand and starting to understand how much we truly don't understand about them. So both of those projects are sounding really exciting, and I hope have some legs going into this, going into 2026.
And just out of curiosity, if everything works out, everything goes smooth, do you have an idea on when like filming may potentially start, slash when people could start potentially looking out for when these projects might come out? Maybe like 2027, anything like that?
So I will say that I am terrible at predicting anything like that. So the series that I did, Legend Hunter, was in development for about 6 years, and then after we filmed it, it was another 2 years before it was released.
Oh, so people are
So
just definitely gonna have to keep tabs on you, follow you on social media, and I'll have you back on the show once you get all this stuff rolling, man.
sounds great, absolutely. And I
So I
will be
guess
I'm going to be speaking at CryptidCon next month, so in November in Lexington, Kentucky, and I can find all the information on CryptidCon on their Instagram or on their website. And I'm really excited to do that because it's been a while since I've given one of these talks, and I really have a good time with that. So that, and I'll be up there. I'll also be at a table selling books and talking to folks. So I'm looking forward to that.
oh man, I wish I was able to make it out this year. I've popped out to CryptiCon a few times. I don't think I'm gonna be able to make it out this year, which is really unfortunate considering you're actually gonna be there this year. But is this your first year going to CryptiCon? Like
It
just in
is.
general, even attending?
Yeah, yeah, I'm really excited. There was oh god, I was supposed to go back in 2019, 2020, something like that, and then it kind of fell through in the last minute. I just wasn't able to do it with some family stuff. So I'm really excited to be going this
Oh,
time.
oh yeah, dude, it's a lot of fun. It's one of probably like the bigger ones. Like Small Town Monster Fest was pretty big. I know they didn't put it on, I think last year because they're working on film projects. So hopefully next year they'll end up putting it back on again. But CryptidCon and Small Town Monster Fest seem, at least currently, like they're probably the two of the bigger cryptid conventions as far as this side of everything goes, or this side of the country goes. But
Awesome.
CryptidCon, when I went there 3 years ago, they had like full three different rooms set up. They had a speaker room. Like it was a really, really awesome setup. Like the tickets are not too steep, but definitely worth it considering how many different people they have pop up and how much they got going on. And the fact that it goes on for a couple days, it's not just a single day, that always makes it more worth it because you can listen to speakers and still get a chance to go around and vent and talk to all the podcasters and authors and researchers and all the interesting people there.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm really excited. It's going to be great. And I know Cliff Barachman is going to be there, and he's such a great guy. I have a lot of fun with him every time we get the chance to hang out. So I'm looking forward to that. And there's a bunch of other folks that I know who are going to be there. So yeah, it's a great lineup.
Just out of curiosity too, are you planning on recording your talk or anything that you do there? Just if there's any listeners out there that might want to be able to try to catch it?
I'm not sure. I don't. I'm honestly. I'd have to talk to the organizers of the event and see see what they do with that. But I'm not going to be doing any of it myself.
Because I know that there's some events that are starting to do things where they do like live ticket, like streaming and stuff like
Oh,
that.
cool.
I don't know if CryptidCon has really gotten into that, but then on the other side, I know that some people will just kind of like live broadcast when they do speeches and stuff like that. So yeah, I guess it kind of depends on the venue because any of those places that are starting to do those like web tickets, obviously they're probably not going to let you post anything out or do anything. But
Yeah.
at the same
Yeah.
time, if it's your speech, you should have the rights to it, right? To at least not the full thing, but at least your portion.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure I'll take some pictures. I'll do a little bit of video, but yeah, I'll see what they do as far as live streaming.
Well, man, if you ever come up towards Michigan for any reason, you'll have to let me know because I'd love to be able to go on some type of adventure with you at some point, man.
That would be excellent. My cousin lives in Michigan, so I would like to get up there.
Well, perfect. If you ever make it out this way, man, we'll have to go on a squatch hike or something.
Sounds great. I would enjoy that.
But if you're going to give any of the listeners any words of wisdom today, because I always like to end on a high note and give the listener some words of wisdom. What might today's words of wisdom be?
I would say that kind of similar to what we started with, that there are a lot of hard things that are happening right now. But some advice that you gave me a few weeks ago is when one door closes, another one opens, and I am finding that to be very, very true. And I think it's just a great thing to keep in mind that we have no idea what tomorrow is going to bring, and it could be a really good thing.
Oh yeah.
Tomorrow could be, you know we just don't know. We just don't know. There are so many unknowns out there. There are so many things that are, and that's it. That's an exciting prospect for me. That there are so many things that we don't know, and that in today's environment, I think it's really important to just keep that positivity and keep on realizing that it is not. Things are not hopeless. Things are not foretold. We truly don't know what tomorrow is going to bring, and it might be much better than we are thinking.
Oh yeah, definitely, man. I've seen that throughout my life. That anytime you think something really, really bad happens, something really, really good happens. The only reason that happened was because that bad thing happened.
Yeah.
So, a lot of the time somebody will get fired from a job. They think it's the end of the world, but they end up getting a way better job with higher pay, or, they end up having an issue in a relationship. They end up breaking up. They think it's the end of the world. But now, because that person's not around, the new opportunity opens up that they meet the best person they've ever met in their life. People need to kind of keep that mentality sometimes. It's always hard when you're in that moment struggling, but you got to bring back to the broader picture. And at least again, from my experiences, maybe it's chain of events, whatever. But anytime any bad event has happened, that's been the starting point that something good happens later on, and it wouldn't have happened unless that bad event happened.
I agree, and I think it's important to hear that from someone as well. And that meant a lot when you said that to me. So I would like to, put that out there to everybody else as well.
Well, I appreciate that, man. I knew you were having a tough day that day, and I didn't want to pester you about the show or anything like that. But I mean, clearly it worked out for you, man. I'm really, really glad
Yes,
to see that everything turned out right side up, and everything is actually getting into a better spot for you, man. Because it seems like you enjoy doing this stuff a lot more than were you were doing your 9 to 5 job. As much fun as that would definitely be too. But again, everybody has their passions, and I'm glad that one door closed, but your passion reopened again, and
yes.
maybe not the same title. Maybe you'll get a new title that you'll be able to trademark. But back to the Beast Hunter days, out there traveling, having fun, and in a few years, maybe you'll even be able to bring your kids around with you, and you guys can do it as a team.
I hope so. That would be excellent. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, man. And if anybody wanted to keep tabs on you to figure out when these new projects are coming out, if anybody wanted to possibly scoop some of your old books, pick up some of your new fiction books, or just keep tabs on you in general, man, where can people come and find you in the internet? And where can people come and check out your books and also check out maybe even some of your previous film work you've done?
So patspain.com is a great starting point. And then I'm pretty active on Instagram and getting there on TikTok with my wife's help. So those are the two real social medias that I'm getting involved with. But patspain.com is a great starting point. The books are available on Amazon, and if there's any chance to order them through your local bookstore, they'd be able to order them for you as well.
And I always have to ask for anybody that's an author, do you offer signed copies if people were interested in buying a signed copy? Because I know that there's a lot
Absolutely.
of listeners that were big fans of Beast Hunter, and I'm sure that they would love to get a signed copy of one of your books.
Yes, absolutely. On patspain.com, there's a contact on there, and I will get them much faster than I was able to get my books to you. So yes, I guarantee. Yeah, I will. I would be very, very happy to offer signed copies.
Well, again, no rush on mine, man. I just appreciate the fact that you were able to send me some signed copies, and then we're able to come back for a second conversation. But
Thank
since
you
you're
so
back in the
much.
field, you're doing all this type of stuff. Hopefully, it won't go as long next time without having a conversation, because it's
That
always
sounds great.
never know where it's going to go, but it always ends up being a fun conversation.
Totally agree. Thank you.